Are you struggling to get your website ranked on big search engines like Google and Bing? Or maybe you need to check your robot.txt file on your website. In this video, I'm going to explain what it is and how to get one and why it's important for ranking on search engines such as Google. So what is a robots.txt file? A robots.txt file probably is one of the most simple files on your website, but one of the easiest to mess up. A robots.txt file tells big search engines, again, like Google, like Bing, where to search on your website and where to trawl. It tells crawlers, the robots as such, to where to go on your website and where to find the valuable information that they can then list on their search engine. They look for content, and you can write in the robots.txt file where you want them to go and where you don't want them to go. For example, if you don't want them to go on blogs, you can tell search engines not to go on the blogs and not to go into locked areas which have content which maybe you don't want to share with the search engines. It's kind of like a guide. It's not a direct instruction. You can't control the crawlers, but it tells some search engines how to crawl the site. You can set the robots.txt file to teach the search engine how to crawl the site. And some of the most prolific websites in the world do this in a very valuable, very intelligent way. The robots.txt file isn't a very big file. It's only 500 kilobytes. However, it's very important to get this right, and every website should use one. When trying to understand the robots.txt file, it's important to note that not all search engines and crawlers abide by your rules, as mentioned before, abide by the rules of the robots.txt file. Now, Google isn't one of those robots, and most big search engines often do abide by the rules. But it's key to remember that you're just setting out rules, and they're not mandatory. These websites will happily break your rules. Certain ones will happily break your rules and scan the whole of your site, the back end and the front end if they can get access to it, and bypass any deterrent that you may stop normal users on your website. For example, maybe you have a paywall, and if they can get past the paywall, they'll more than happily try and scan your site. Now, most of them don't do this, but it's important to remember that. It's just some search engines that do this, and it's rather annoying because maybe you've got some content that you don't want to share with the internet and it's more for private viewership. But this is important to note, but it's not something you can avoid. And the best thing you can do is try and set up your robots.txt file, as I'll explain later in the video, as efficiently as possible. So when they are abiding, like the majority of them do, they'll go to the places that you want them to go, and they won't be writing page descriptions and putting links in their search engines for sites, pages that you don't want people who aren't authorized, to go onto these pages. So do you need a robots.txt file on your website? Well, having a robots.txt file, like I said before, isn't crucial, especially for small websites. But realistically, there's no good reason not to have one. Even if you have a blog based in Google Blogs, there's no good reason not to have a robots.txt file. And they just give you more control over where search engines can go and can't go. For example, it can prevent crawlers, like search engine crawlers, from entering duplicated content or content that you've repeated. Maybe you're building a new website within your website, but you want to keep it hidden from the general public, and for the most part it might be from your website. However, crawlers might still be able to find find these pages because they're still addressed to the same domain name, and maybe you want to keep them away from this new site that you're building. And as mentioned before, maybe you've got some internal pages into your website that you don't want links put onto search results and allowing people trying to access the search results. Another benefit of having a robots.txt file, and potentially why you might need one, is maybe you have quite a loaded server as it is, and you've got a lot of traffic on your server, and it helps to reduce the chances of overloaded servers from slowing down your website for actual traffic, real people, and destroying their experience when using your site. There's another key point is with, especially for Google, Google is crawling websites 24/7, and a lot of the time they seem to have a crawl budget, and if you can reduce the amount it has to crawl your website and only crawls the useful information that you want to be placed on Google, then it can drastically improve the crawl budget, as you like, and help to prevent Google from thinking that your website is a waste of time if it's crawling through empty pages or pages that are duplicated, and then it can spend time crawling and looking into the details of what value your website is giving to the internet. Another great point is preventing images and videos and resource files from appearing on Google's results, Google search results. For example, that it's maybe you've got some pictures that are private or only paid access, or maybe you've got some videos that you don't want to be placed on Google or Google Images or another search engine. Then if you can control where they go, then maybe it's quite beneficial for you, especially if you've paid for that picture, and you've taken that picture yourself, and you don't want those kind of images to be spread online, people to copyright them and use them, and it just helps to reduce the headache, especially if you're a blogger or some kind of website that produces images and has to, maybe you're on the ground taking pictures, I don't know, in some faraway land like in Afghanistan or whatever, and you're doing all this research, but you don't want someone else to use them, and think, oh, this is just free content, which people often do if they go on Google Images and don't realize that that's someone's intellectual property. On the other hand, if you're someone who doesn't want Google or another search engine to be showing your website on their search engine, and maybe it's more of a private website that people can only know about if they type in the domain name, and you don't want it showing on the search results, then maybe you could enforce a rule saying, I don't want Google, I don't want Go, I don't want, and that that can work. Obviously, like I said, if it's done wrong, if you do if you set up the robots.txt file in a bad way, they'll often just won't read it, they'll ignore it, and they'll go past it. It has to be done absolutely correctly. Typically, Google, for example, doesn't rank websites that have blocked Google on the robots.txt file. But that being said, if it's done wrong, like I said, they'll just ignore it and they'll just post it on their website anyway. Some of the other search engines ignore them completely, as stated before, but if you've got a private website, this is one of the number one ways that you should be using to stop search engines ranking your content, especially if you've got a lot of traffic and search engines get excited about that and think, people want to go on this website, or you're producing a lot of content that might be desirable, but yeah, this is the number one way for sure, that you can start off by stopping search engines using your data and using your website on their search engine. User agents. Each search engine identifies itself with different user agent names. The user agent name, it will be the name of the crawler on your website. That'll be the name that you might see pop up when you're looking at some traffic, especially if you've got low traffic on your website. You might see them. They're often called different names and quite identifiable. Google has two main ones. They are Google Bot, or one word, and Google Bot-image. Bing has one, Bing Bot. Yahoo has one, SERP, SLURP. I'm going to butcher this name. Baidu. Baidu Spider is their bot. And DuckDuckGo, and DuckDuck is called DuckDuckBot. Now again, you see these, they'll be going through your website, and these are key names to remember because you can put these in the Robots.TXT file, and then you can go from there. They're the exact names that you can put in to identify the user agent, and tell it not to come on your website or where it can go, because you can set up different pathways for each bot, each crawler, because obviously each one works in a different way and is looking for different things to rank it in their search engines. Each one has their own preferences, for example. So what are directives, and what are the directives? Well, directives are the rules that you're putting in place in the robots.txt file to declare, which user agent follows what rules. Sounds a bit complex, but basically it's just the exact names for telling the crawlers what path to take and where to go on the website first, second, blah, 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 and where not to go. So first of all, the first directive is disallow. Disallow is a directive and instruction to the search engine crawlers on what pages, what files they're not allowed to go on. You're effectively saying, this is not worth crawling, please don't go on this. Again, this is like a roadmap that you're giving kind of vague instructions to, and your rules. They're not obliged to listen to them, but most of them do, as we said before. It's key to remember that if you do it wrong, they'll just ignore it. As stated before, they'll just ignore it. They'll just go straight past it. But for example, if you had a blog page, if you wanted to block all search engines from, or maybe a select few from looking at your posts and searching, and finding information to put on their search engine. If you didn't want them to see your blogs on, I don't know, whatever, sexuality or whatever you've got on there, like a certain class of blogs, or all of your blogs for that example, for whatever, that's completely possible. So along with disallow, you've also got allow, and even though you might disallow a certain search engine to look at a certain page, or all of the search engines to look at a certain page, you can allow the search engines to look at an individual page in a subdirectory, or a certain page that has a lot of information that you want to spread. It's a very key tool to optimizing your website and making sure search engines, especially if it's a big website and a lot of content, then you can kind of tell the search engines where to look and what area you want them to be on. For example, maybe we go back to the blog example, maybe you have a subcategory about, I don't know, vases, and for whatever reason you don't want that information being put out, but then inside that you have another blog that's kind of attached to the same area, subdirectory or whatever, that then talks about, I don't know, I'm not much of an expert on vases, but talks about glass vases, and it's not the pot vases that the other bits are talking about. And you want the search engine to see it. You get my drift. It allows you to have more control of where you want them to go. Again, they don't have to listen to it, but it's very useful. So how do you find your Robots.TXT file? Well, the simple way of doing it is typing in your domain in the URL in your browser and typing in /robots.txt. And it should come up with your file. It should just be a simple plain text file, nothing on your website, and if there's one there, it'll come up, and it'll also be, this is visible to anyone. You can do this on any website you go on. You can do it on my website at SEO tool-kit.com, but you can do it on any website. Just go /robots.txt file. So how to make a robots.txt file if you don't have one already? If you find out that you don't have one, then you should go to my website. The link will be in the description, and there's a robots.txt generator, and you can generate a robots.txt, and it's made very easy. You don't have to know code. All you need to do is fill in the details that you want to fill in, and you can control the majority of the major, all the major search engines and search engine crawlers, and you can control where they go on your website. It's a great tool. I recommend using it and just checking out the site down below. But yeah, that's what I recommend doing. It's one of the best tools out there for sure. There's lots of ways of doing it. You can also create one yourself, but like I said, if it's not done correctly, then it won't work, and they will just ignore it, or they won't do your site. Some of them just won't look at your site, and you don't want that, especially if you're looking to get traffic from Google and other big players in the market of search engine, and you want to optimize your search engine as much as possible. So check it out in the description. So where do you put your robots.txt file after you've generated it? There's a few options depending on how your website's configured and set up. If you're just using a normal server, then you should go to your server and you can place the robots.txt file in the root directory on your server, and it should be easy to find and place. And there's lots of very broken down tutorials, because obviously every server is different. But this is the number one way of doing it. Most people have websites, however, on WordPress, or they might have a blog on, I don't know, a subdomain blog, which might say blog.yourdomain.com, and in that scenario, then you should be able to access it by going blog.domain.com/robots.txt. This is obviously different from each platform you're using. It's a bit more difficult, and you might have to contact people and work out how to do it. With WordPress, I believe the majority of people on the internet are using WordPress. There's many plugins that you'll be able to use, free plugins that you can just whack onto your site and easily access it. It's not the most seamless of ways of putting a file, robots.txt, such an important file on your website. However, it's not hard. You just have to download a plugin to your website and whack it on there. It's as simple as that. So how do you audit your robots.txt file for errors? Look, errors are super easy, like mentioned before. It's super easy to do, especially if you're trying to create one yourself. This is why I recommend using the generator down below. Sorry for another shameless plug. But it's such a great tool. But if you're trying to create one yourself, or maybe you've bought your website from a website provider, and maybe someone's already set it up, it's a second-hand website kind of thing, then if you find an issue with it, then you can easily just go to the coverage report in Google Search in Google Search Console, paste in your URL, your domain name into Google, and it'll inspect it for you in the inspection tool in Google Console, and it'll explain it all there very simply, very easily on how to fix it, and they'll explain the problem. They're very good on Google Console. Definitely recommend it. But every problem will be different. I can't cover each problem in this, but you just have to go to Google Console and put your URL in the inspection tool. I'll whack a link in the description below onto to the Google Console, so you can easily get to the problem. If Google does come back, however, and say that submitted URL is blocked by Robots.TXT, this is a problem that a lot of people face, then this means that one of your URLs that you've posted in, one of your sitemaps submitted along with the website, have been blocked by the Robots.TXT file. Now, this isn't a problem. This is just a common problem that Google doesn't seem to point out a lot of the time when this does happen. It's a small problem, but it's one of those. Yeah, so the best thing to do would be to recreate your sitemap. Again, I also provide another tool on my website. It's a very useful website, got lots of tools. A tool to create a sitemap, and a brand new one, super easy, super simple, and it's basically the same process for setting it up as putting in the Robots.TXT file. Yeah, every website needs one, and if it's corrupted or messed up or just not updated in the right way, then you can create a new one on my website. I'll leave that description in the description below as well. So in conclusion, the Robots.TXT file is clearly a very simple but very powerful tool. If used correctly, if used wisely, then it could impact your SEO and rankings, your search engine rankings, in such a profound way. And it could be the thing that's holding your business back. So I'd recommend working out if your Robots.TXT file is working correctly on your website. If you haven't got one, again, generators down below. If your sitemap's broken, again, generators down below, and I'll leave any other useful links down below that I've mentioned. Remember to leave a comment if you've got any questions, or you've got some things to add that I haven't mentioned in this video, or some more details. Maybe there's some changes that that you're not quite sure about. So please leave those questions down below, and like and subscribe. It helps me out a lot, and I hope you have a great day.